So Joe, we've been doing this podcast for a few years now, and I actually recently had a solopreneur approach me and was like, gosh, I would love to do that, but that seems so intimidating. It seems like the tech side is really overwhelming, yada, yada, yada. And I think what people don't realize is how simple it can actually be to throw up a podcast and get it out there. If it's something that people are interested in doing, and we'll get to the benefits in a second, I don't want technology to be the thing that they get hung up on. So I'm just going to say that not as difficult as it seems. You could do a quick Google search, quick ChatGPT search. You'll figure it out because we are such big fans of podcasting for your business. So Joe, do you want to kind of dive into the benefits, not only that we've seen, but just in general, podcasting for solopreneurs?
Sure. And just before we dig into the benefits, one of the biggest things to keep in mind is, I was at Inbound, which is HubSpot's conference. It's a big marketing conference. And there was, a good deal of talk about podcasting. And it is believed now to be a very effective way to do your marketing, that there's still, even though there's 4 million podcasts or something out there, most of them aren't really active. There's not a lot going on. Some of them are very inconsistent. But if you go in and do it right, you can really make some traction in terms of growing your brand, growing, your audience and, people that are interested in your business. So just keep that in mind as we go through this. But from my perspective, the kind of the benefits of starting a podcast, it's building authority, right? If you're out doing a podcast and talking about things that you've researched and are carefully presenting to your audience in a way that is helpful to them, your authority is going to go up, right? And that's one of the most important things you can do in terms of building credibility and trust. Authority can lead to trust, because if people say this person's giving me good info, well, they're going to trust you more. It'll let you connect with your audience, right? So you're talking to them and engaging them. You might reach people you wouldn't reach another way. If you're just posting a blog post waiting for people to Google search it. With a podcast, there are people that really, really love podcasts. And, if they find you or you lead them to your podcast, they'll dig in and you'll get a lot more attention, a lot more, there's a term for like brain time or something, or attention. Basically you're going to get more of their attention than you would just putting out blogs or social posts.
To piggyback off that, while I do dishes at night, I listen to a podcast. I can't read a blog post while I do dishes, but I can listen.
Oh, you could, but you break some dishes.
Exactly. Been there, done that. But anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I'm just babbling here about, because I really believe in this. You can do some good networking by doing a podcast, because, though I'll talk more about this, but guest-based podcasts are more challenging right now than more like just kind of discussion, discussing a topic yourself. If you do have a guest-based podcast, you can do some really cool networking that way. You can meet some people that are maybe higher up, you punch above your weight a little bit, get some people on. I know we've done that with a few of our guests, especially recently. And you've got, as you pointed out, it's not hard to get started, right? And those podcasts can be a podcast, but they can also be turned into little video clips or audio clips for social. And so there's a lot of ways to use that stuff. And I just think it's a really great way for you to expand your reach of your business and expand your credibility, the trust that the community has in you, and to grow your business.
Yeah. And I'm glad you pointed out the repurposing of content with podcasts, because it can be such a time saver. And who are we kidding? All solopreneurs need more time, so that's a huge benefit. The other thing I want to say is, I know I talked about technology being a barrier for some people. I've also heard people say, I won't be very good at it. I'll be really awkward. Yeah, that's true. Nobody's good at podcasting at the beginning. Nobody, their first take isn't like, oh, I'm going to get 1 million downloads. It's all a learning process, but you won't know that until you actually start doing it. Joe, I actually haven't listened to our first episode in a really long time.
We should do that.
Just to remember how far we've come. But even the biggest podcasters out there, John Lee Dumas has said, I can't listen to my first episode. Everybody's in the same boat. It's like with video. Everybody has to start somewhere. So if you don't think you'll be good at it, Odds are you won't be, but that doesn't mean you won't become good at it.
Some people aren't very good at it, but they provide good content. I'll give some examples. One of the ones that I used to listen to, I don't listen to as much anymore, but Lex Friedman. The guy he doesn't have a great speaking voice. He's a little monotone. He actually used to use him to fall asleep sometimes he doesn't have this like amazing presentation. Doesn't have a radio voice at all. But his podcast is huge, and he just asks good questions and discusses interesting topics. So you don't even have to get really, I hope you don't, because I'm doing this and I was never made for the radio or TV or anything else. But it's really, if you can get to the point of providing good information, good insights, you don't necessarily have to be a great personality presenter to have a successful podcast.
Yeah. Well, so let's flip the script. I do want to talk quickly about podcast guesting. So it's one, to host your own podcast, but it's another thing to be a guest on podcasts, which requires so little prep time, because what you're being interviewed on, you should be the expert on anyway. It's really a matter of coordination, and then showing up for your interview, and then sharing the interview. And it can really be a great one to expand into new audiences. Again, to create your own content that doesn't take a lot of time. If you're not podcast guesting in your niche right now, you need to be doing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a great thing to do. I did want to share something I heard. I think it was John Lee Dumas that said it. I'm not sure, and I can't find it on Google, but podcast listeners listen to podcasts, which sounds like the dumbest statement ever. But the point is, if you have a podcast and you then go on other people's podcasts as a guest, then you are reaching people that may listen to your podcast. So if you do have a podcast guesting is a very good idea to grow your listener base.
Yep. Listener base, again, networking, like you said earlier, those partnerships and collaborations can come out of it. All in all, consider podcasting for your solopreneur business. No business is too small to do this. I'm excited. I hope some of you do it, and I hope you reach out to us and let us know if you started doing it. Because I just think it could be a really cool way to reach new people. But Joe, that's all I had for today. Do you have anything else you want to add?
Yeah, just in terms of podcast guesting, I think there's a few things to keep in mind. Or one thing, I'll keep it short here, but one thing really important. When you're doing your own podcast, you develop a style and an approach, and you should do that. You shouldn't just wing it. Carla, you've done a great job of building a kind of a loose structure around how we do our interview podcasts. And as I said, interview podcasts are tougher these days, so think carefully of whether you want to do that or not. But when you go on someone else's podcast, you can't just bring your thing to it. You have to bring your insight and knowledge, but understand what they're doing and how they're doing it so that you kind of fit into their framework. It's really important. And sometimes people are great at communicating those things. Sometimes you just got to go and listen to their podcast and figure out how you should approach it. But that little level of research can really be helpful in terms of having a more successful podcast guesting experience. Yeah, absolutely. Well, folks, we hope this was inspirational today. If you've been on the fence about starting one, this is your sign to go do it. If you haven't considered it, consider adding it to your 2025 plans. And otherwise, we just so appreciate you tuning in. Be sure to subscribe on any of the platforms. Give us a 5-star review, a comment. We so appreciate it. And we will see you next week on the Aspiring Solopreneur.